Hello, we are Mohamed Ali Khnisi and Yusra Bouzid, two PhD students from Tunisia. We will talk in this presentation about an accessible educational game for deaf learners. The presentation is broken down into 5 sections. First, we will start by an introduction. Then, I'm going to show some related works. After that, I will present a new educational game for deaf learners. In section 4, I will show you an experimentation in classroom with deaf learners. Finally, we will conclude by a conclusion and future works.
Let's begin by the introduction. Sign language is an integral part and an identifying feature of membership in the deaf culture. According to the World Federation of Deaf, there are about 70 million deaf people who use sign language as their first language or mother tongue. For the majority of these people, learning any spoken language is not a natural and automatic process. It's rather a long and intensive task. It should be noted that around 80% of deaf people worldwide have an insufficient education and literacy problems. Indeed, many studies have reported that low educational attainment levels among these individuals are associated basically to their inability to develop reading and writing skills in spoken languages, or through the so-called oral approach, which excludes the use of signed languages. There is no doubt that having a means to represent their own language in a writing form can bring to these signers the same advantages that writing systems for spoken languages bring to speakers. For example, young deaf learners can express, share, and record their ideas and thoughts on paper without translating it all the time. Moreover, a sign language writing form can be very useful to improve the ability of these learners to comprehend and acquire the writing versions of oral languages. To date, a few attempts at developing a standardized notation system for representing sign languages have been made. One of the best known and most widely used is signwriting. Signwriting system uses a set of highly iconic symbols to represent manual and non-manual features of signed languages. Signwriting is the only writing system in regular use. It's now adopted in more than 10 countries to aid literacy, such as USA, Germany, Brazil, and Tunisia. However, it's important to stress here that a training to learn to interpret the static transcription is needed for novice users who are accustomed to the use of their sign language in visual gesture modality. We believe that the use of information and communication technology, especially 3D signing avatars, can support the teaching of literacy to students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Actually, these digital agents have the potential to act as a powerful communication medium for learners to display knowledge in their first language and make the writing information completely accessible to them. On the other hand, we believe that the use of computer games is another promising alternative to reinforce learning experience of deaf learners, since they can consume the attention of these learners and increase their motivation and engagement. In this context, we propose a new learning game that federates the avatar technology, computer game, and the sign language writing form signwriting to motivate deaf signers to read and write in their mother tongue.
Now, I will show you some related works. Researchers have demonstrated the effectiveness of learning version of existing games in many domains. As example of learning version of existing games, we cite Rainbow Bubble, that was adapted in learning context for teaching English language. A learning version of Sims, designed also for teaching English language. A learning version of Pac-Man game, designed for responding to questions about programming language. A learning version of Snake, that designed for determining the precedence relationship between activity, and Also, we cite a learning version of shooting that was adopted for teaching introduction to programming language. This example shows that many works have adopted an existing games for teaching many subjects. However, most of these games were designed for learners with typical development. Rather less is now about designing of educational games for learners with special needs. For that, we will introduce in the next section a learning version of memory match game for deaf learners. Now, I will introduce to you the learning version of memory match game designed for deaf people. The traditional version, called memory match game, is a card game in which all of the cards are laid face down on a surface. The objective of the game is to turn over a pair of matching cards with least possible trails. The traditional version, all the cards hold only visual information. However, in the learning version, other type of information have been added, which are word sign writing. The first card holds written information, whilst the second card holds the translation of the word in sign writing. The second pair of cards is visual sign writing, and the third pair of cards is math problems and handwriting. It's important to note that when the learner selects a card that holds handwriting notation, a 3D avatar animation appears for rendering the notation in visual gesture modality. Now I will show you the game.
The learning version of memory match game is very simple. It's comprised of 8 pairs of cards. The player just must turn over pairs of matching cards that have the same meaning with the least possible trials. Blue cards hold sign writing notations, while green cards hold their description in writing language. When the player flips a card that holds a sign writing notation, the virtual signer starts the interpretation of its notation content in visual gesture modality. The game is over when all the cards have been matched. It should note here that the incorporation of a virtual avatar in the game could be particularly beneficial for 2 main reasons. In the one hand, the signing avatar could offer a support for players to understand and grasp the sign writing notation content, and this by displaying and interpreting the transcribed gestures in natural and comprehensible movements. In the other hand, rendering an animated human-like character could certainly increase and promote the engagement, fun, and motivation of deaf children. The virtual avatar is driven by an animation software called TuneSigner. TuneSigner was conceived to automatically interpret the exact gestures represented within the sign writing notations. The system architecture consists of 3 parts. The first part is devoted to parse and process the sign writing notations, which are provided in an XML-based format named SWML. All information associated with the input SWML file is processed to identify the significant features that compose the internal structure of the sign. The second part is dedicated to provide a detailed linguistic representation for each notation in order to specify how correspondent signs are articulated. Finally, the third part is devoted to convert the obtained linguistic representation to the sign modeling language SML. SML can describe any signed utterance in terms of translations and earlier rotation of a group of joints like wrist, hand fingers, eyebrows, jaw, and so on. The SML script will be interpreted then by an animation engine to render the 3D animations in real time.
Now I will show you an experimentation in classroom with deaf learners. To sum up, this work described a new educational game for deaf learners. The objective of the game is to foster vocabulary acquisition for deaf learners in both spoken and sign language, to render the learning experience with more fun, to engage deaf learners and to keep them motivated. Future works will study the impact of this learning game on level of knowledge. Thank you for your attention.